Tonight, the LNP returns to power in Queensland, securing a certain majority government. Hello, I'm Isabel Dayman, live from Adelaide. This is ABC News. Also, Australia joins the chorus of voices calling for an end to attacks between Israel and Iran. As summer approaches, many in coastal communities still fear the danger of sharks in the waters. And the Strikers women get off to a poor start in their title defence with a 4-wicket loss to Brisbane. David Crisafulli is set to be sworn in as Queensland's 41st Premier after claiming victory in the state election. The Liberal National Party looks like it'll form a majority government, ending Labor's 9-year reign. One of the new Premier's key promises was to introduce adult time for adult crime before Christmas.
We've got a job to do.
A light gym workout before Queensland's Premier-elect got down to business.
So we're off to work.
So were these shredding trucks, pulling into government headquarters ahead of the changing of the guard. The LNP's victory, ending Labor's nearly 10-year reign, still sinking in.
In historic terms, I said it was like climbing a mountain. Well, it was like climbing a mountain with weighed down with a backpack and in the sleeting snow.
Congratulations coming from Canberra.
Not only did I speak with the Prime Minister, he was good enough to afford me about 20 minutes this morning.
It was a jubilant night for the LNP, nerves turning to elation as seats turned blue. He reiterated his mandate: youth crime, health, housing and cost of living, and promised to work for all.
To the people of this great state, I've lived and I've worked at both ends of it, and I love every inch of it.
Stephen Miles had already addressed the party faithful.
If you consider what we were up against, this is an extraordinary result.
But this was no concession speech.
It is clear that that hasn't been enough to secure a majority of seats for Labor, and also that the LNP is unlikely to have a majority.
In the light of day, Stephen Miles had reassessed as he surveyed the damage in the regions. The post-mortem is underway.
Our team will need to do the work of reconnecting with Queenslanders, particularly regional Queenslanders.
Mr Miles keen to be opposition leader.
I'm not taking anything for granted, and I will let our caucus members decide who leads them.
There's plenty of soul-searching for the Greens, which has failed to make any gains.
Stephen Miles managed to recover some vote, and he managed to hold us off in some of those inner city seats by picking up our policies and directly offering them to Queenslanders.
The outgoing Premier acknowledging it's been a hard-fought campaign.
I'm sure you'll all understand my desire to get to the pub.
Kate McKenna, ABC News, Brisbane.
Federal Labor is playing down any hard lessons from the defeat in Queensland, even pointing to positives in its political battle with the Greens. The coalition is celebrating the win, even if the state LNP doesn't support its key nuclear power policy.
A warm reception for Anthony Albanese, shaking hands and shooting selfies at the Norton Street Italian Festa in Sydney.
Good on you. Thank you so much.
Enjoying the embrace of some loyal supporters after a bruising night for Labor up north.
The outcome was much better for Queensland Labor than what was anticipated just weeks ago, let alone months ago.
Federal Labor insists the loss wasn't as brutal as it might have been, putting it down to an it's time factor and concerns over law and order. And it sees green shoots appearing where the Greens' vote is falling. The party's vote drops steeply in parts of inner Brisbane.
There's a big message in this result for Adam Bandt.
These people are extremists and they're being found out for what it is. And so I think it's a big message there.
The coalition is similarly thrilled with the Greens' struggles, but it's again facing questions over its nuclear policy and how that fits with an LNP government opposed to nuclear power.
The fact that we got rid of Stephen Miles means that we'll be able to have that sensible conversation in a constructive way.
The federal coalition wants to build 7 nuclear reactors on the sites of existing coal-fired power plants around the country. 2 are in Queensland. David Littleproud argues if the coalition wins office, the states, including Queensland, will have to fall into line.
We have to set an energy grid for the East Coast and South Australia and Tasmania, and we need all the states, no matter their political persuasions, to respect the decision of the Australian people.
The Queensland election delivered lessons across the federal political spectrum. Labor might argue it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but results in the regions will give it plenty to worry about. The coalition can claim a win, but there's no endorsement of its key nuclear policy. And the Greens have to wonder if playing hard politics in Canberra is paying off. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
A woman is in hospital after a car ploughed through the front of a bakery in Goolwa, south of Adelaide this morning. Several customers and staff were inside the business when a car crashed through the shop front just before 11 o'clock. A 62-year-old customer was pinned between the shop's counter by the car and was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening leg injuries. The driver, a 69-year-old woman, was also taken to hospital, but police say she doesn't appear to be injured.
We do hope to try and we'll clean up, get things sorted, and hopefully we'll be able to still trade as best we can in a bit of an incapacitated manner.
Major Crash Police are at the scene of a serious 3-car collision in the state's southeast. Emergency services were called to the Riddock Highway about 5 kilometres south of Nangwarry just after 2:30 this afternoon. Police say more than one person has sustained serious injuries. Traffic is being diverted away from the area. Residents of Broken Hill and surrounding towns are still being asked to conserve energy, but the New South Wales government says supplies are stabilising. 4 emergency towers have been erected to replace the 7 brought down by a powerful storm earlier this month. More than 100 workers are on site trying to reconnect the region to the grid. In the meantime, mobile generators are helping relieve the strain on Transgrid's gas generator, which earlier malfunctioned, plunging homes and businesses into darkness.
Getting to a point where even if the gas turbine was to not be working, we've almost got enough power to make sure that everyone still has power in their homes and businesses.
I know people are probably sick of me saying this. If you can reduce your usage, that would be great. If you can turn off the lights in the rooms that you're not in, if you can turn off non-essential appliances, if you can put the air conditioner a bit hotter than you would normally have it, all of that helps, and all of that's helping as all of the generation is coming on board.
Australia has joined the United States in voicing its hope that Israeli airstrikes on Iran will be the end of retaliatory attacks between the two countries. Israel says its bombing was precise and targeted at military sites. Iran claims there was only limited damage, but says 4 of its soldiers were killed.
In the early hours of Saturday morning, 100 Israeli fighter jets set out on their mission. Israel says it hit 20 missile manufacturing and military sites across the country, some near the capital, Tehran. The mission codenamed Days of Repentance, following a barrage of Iranian missiles fired at Israel earlier this month. Its closest ally, the United States, was given a heads up.
It looks like they didn't hit anything other than military targets. My hope is this is the end.
Images posted on social media show emergency crews at this building. Iran playing down the damage from the strikes, but confirming 4 soldiers were killed. Israel is insisting the targets were chosen in line with its national interest and not because of pressure from Washington, as implied by the White House. In Tel Aviv, some Israelis believe the strikes were justified.
It was a good action, but we need to keep it calm. We don't need to get the escalation going.
We need to respond very hard, very quick.
Australia is in lockstep with the US, urging Tehran not to hit back again.
Israel, of course, has a right to retaliate for the attacks that took place from Iran. What I do is join with the US Secretary of State, join with Prime Minister Starmer to continue to work towards a de-escalation in the Middle East.
How Iran responds from here is being watched closely around the world. State media is reporting the country's foreign minister is saying there are no limits as to how far Iran will go to defend itself. The calculation from here is strike back and risk further escalation with Israel, or hold fire and deal with Israel's belief that it's secured a strategic win. And just hours after the strike, proof Israel is refusing to let up in its attacks against Hezbollah. The IDF releasing vision of a massive strike in southern Lebanon on what it claims was an underground compound. The explosion so large it triggered earthquake warnings across Lebanon and northern Israel.
Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran is in Jerusalem and explains the timing of the strikes.
The US had been in Israel's ear for some time, urging it in any strike on Iran to focus on military targets rather than the country's nuclear facilities. And that is what Israel has done just 10 days out from the US presidential election. This is a poll which will have a significant influence on the multiple conflicts happening in the Middle East. Donald Trump, for example, is expected to take a far harder line on the issue of Iran than Joe Biden and his would-be successor, Kamala Harris, potentially giving Israel a little bit more leeway if it decided to attack Iran again in the future. These strikes have also come just ahead of the expected restarting of ceasefire and hostage talks in Gaza. These are talks which will be the first since the killing of the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar at the hands of Israel just over a week ago. However, it is not clear whether either side will be prepared to negotiate.
Matthew Doran reporting. There's now just over a week left for the two parties to convince voters to cast their ballot in the US election, and young people are a key target. Previously, they tended to be Democrat supporters, but recent polling suggests a divide. Donald Trump's masculine campaign is striking a chord with young men, while Kamala Harris's stance on abortion rights is being embraced by young women. North America correspondent Carrington Clark reports from North Carolina.
Since 1853, North Carolina's state fair has drawn in the crowds. But even here, you can't totally escape another important contest.
I early voted to ensure that my voice was heard.
One of them's crazy and the other one's ridiculous. I'm not going to say which one's which.
North Carolina's 16 electoral college votes represent a competitively sought-after prize. One of the so-called 7 swing states was to determine this year's election. It's the only in the group won by Donald Trump at the last election, so represents a pick-up opportunity for Kamala Harris this year. To get those necessary votes, Donald Trump has increasingly used non-traditional media to target a specific market, young men, appearing with digital stars, the Nelk Boys, and comedian Theo Von.
No, I would just do cocaine. That was really, yeah.
There were plenty of young men in attendance at this Trump rally in Greenville, North Carolina, including 23-year-old Jack Lawrence.
They want to bring back the masculine face that you saw back in the 60s and 70s with American men. Just strong men providing for their family.
Young Americans usually break heavily for Democrats, but recent polling suggests Trump's hyper-masculine campaign is working to attract Gen Z men across to the Republicans.
To go home.
Kamala Harris is trying to reach young women where they are, including the massive Call Her Daddy podcast.
There are now 20 states with Trump abortion bans.
I think young men are gravitating towards Trump at an astounding degree, and I think that young women are rallying for Kamala Harris.
The Democrats are hoping to encourage enough young women to get to the polls to offset any weakness with young men.
I think that reproductive rights are on the ballot. I think they're rallying to say that we feel like we're losing our autonomy, we feel like our agency is being threatened and challenged, and that is something to vote for, that is something to fight for.
With the race still an effective dead heat, it may be a battle of the sexes that determines the next president of the United States. Carrington Clark, ABC News, North Carolina.
Russian strikes in the Ukrainian cities of Dnipro and the capital Kyiv have killed 7 people. The attacks damaged multiple buildings in Dnipro, including a hospital where more than 20 people were wounded and a teenage girl was killed in a drone strike in Kyiv. Russia's military says it's made gains along Ukraine's eastern Donetsk front in capturing the frontline village of Alexandropol. It comes as citizens in neighbouring Georgia voted to keep a pro-Russia party in power, deepening divisions in a country torn between the West and its old Soviet past. Japanese voters are going to the polls for an election which will determine whether the ruling LDP retains its grip on power. Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba called the election earlier this month, just 3 days after he took over from his predecessor amid a corruption scandal. The Liberal Democratic Party, which has been in power almost continuously since 1955, has seen its approval rating dip below 20% in recent months. Today's election could see the party lose its majority. Cost of living is front of mind for Japanese voters, as well as concern about political corruption. As the weather heats up and Australians return to the beach, many swimmers are still haunted by a spate of shark attacks last summer. In South Australia, there were 6 bites in just over 6 months. 3 of them were fatal, and all were believed to be from great whites. This year marks 25 years since great white sharks became protected in Australian waters, but the recent spike in attacks has many questioning whether protecting the predators is costing human lives. Lincoln Rothwell and Shay Chorley travelled to South Australia's Eyre Peninsula for this report.
The beaches and breaks around the tiny town of Elliston are world class.
The reason that we live out here so far away from everything is because of the surf.
But along with the dolphins and seals, the surfers know they share the waves with something else.
The huge white pointers are unpredictable, terrifying and ferocious monsters.
Great white sharks have always drawn fascination and fear, hunted to the edge of extinction.
She weighed in at 1,000.
In 1999, great whites were declared a protected species.
Simon Bacanello remains missing.
But 2024, the 25th anniversary of that protection, was a grim milestone in South Australia.
Shark attack. A surfer still missing after a suspected encounter.
6 attacks in 8 months, 3 of them fatal. 2 were in the tiny community of Elliston.
The first attack was when we lost Simon.
Teacher Simon Bacanello had just moved to town.
We were surfing with him when he was taken, and that just rocked all of us. He was just so loved at the school. He was just stoked to be here.
As the community grieved, the town experienced a second trauma.
A 64-year-old man is recovering in hospital after the 6th shark attack in South Australian waters in little more than 6 months.
Murray Adams taught alongside Simon at the local school and survived the bite. Now, many are questioning whether protecting great whites is costing human lives.
We started protecting him and then we just left it at that. And sometimes I feel like we as surfers and ocean users are just left as cannon fodder.
In the waters off the Neptune Islands, around 200 kilometres south of Elliston, Flinders University ecologist Charlie Houveniers is trying to better understand great white numbers. He's collecting genetic samples for population modelling.
But the range is actually quite broad, going from about 1,200 to a bit more than 3,000 adult white sharks.
Professor Houveniers says there's no scientific evidence that shark numbers have recovered, and even if they had, it wouldn't explain the recent attacks.
We don't know what happened in South Australia in that summer of 2023-2024. It was an unusual cluster of shark bites, but we're actually seeing these kind of cluster of bites regularly happening, not just in Australia, but across the world.
Houveniers says policies for population recovery need to be matched with appropriate mitigation, arguing that culling sharks is not an effective way to protect swimmers, compared to a range of new technologies like barriers, real-time warning systems, shark deterrents, and drones. Dr. Brianna Lebusque agrees. She's an expert in how public perceptions affect conservation. In her research, one movie is mentioned a lot.
We definitely think there is such a thing as the Jaws effect.
Multiple studies have suggested the 50-year-old blockbuster is still influencing public opinion and also public policy.
Some of the policies around the idea of culling sharks and sort of if a shark gets a taste for humans, then they have to be killed because they're going to keep biting humans. There's no scientific evidence that sharks do that.
In the shadow of newly installed trauma kits, the surfers of Elliston have returned to the ocean that has taken so much.
It's so wild how much the ocean has been imperative to our recovery as well. Yeah, getting back into the water and just that is what getting back to normal life looks like for us too.
A way of life worth saving. Lincoln Rothel, ABC News, Elliston.
And if you want to see the full story of protecting a predator, you can watch it anytime on ABC iView or YouTube. The race is on to secure the final top two spots for the AFLW Finals Series after the Western Bulldogs pulled off an upset win over Euro. The Saints were left to rue missed opportunities as the Dogs held on in a thrilling 1-point come-from-behind win.
A back-and-forth battle in Ballarat, Saints coach Nick Del Santo aware what was on the line. 2 goals either side of half-time gave the Saints some breathing room.
Squeezed it in! Only took 15 seconds and the Saints have got their fourth.
But the Dogs kicked into gear and the Saints felt the pressure, letting slip 2 late chances.
Less than a minute to play to give her side the lead. She hasn't got the purchase she wants.
The Bulldogs hanging on in a match decided by the barest of margins, ending any chance of the Saints making finals. With the men's premiership coach in the crowd, the women put on a show. Taylor Smith added 3 to her tally.
It's a Lions fiesta in Springfield.
The home side dominating, kicking 11 majors for the match. The Swans couldn't find an answer goalless for 3 quarters. Brisbane comfortably home and into third on the ladder with a 68-point win. Collingwood has had a disappointing and injury-hit season, but the Pies were out to salvage some pride in a fourth-quarter fight with Carlton.
Collingwood are in front.
But whatever Collingwood did, the Blues did better and secured the 4-point win.
Flying pin!
Dreamtime in Darwin was a headline act even before the first bounce. And once the footy started, the spectacle only got better. Essendon was looking good, leading for most of the second half.
It's Georgia G. Bombers out to a game-high 11-point lead.
The Tigers refusing to go away, and with 75 seconds left on the clock, the skipper stepped up.
It's Soccer Troop!
All square in a thrilling and frantic finish. The Bombers are now at risk of falling out of the 8, and both sides were left dealing with serious injuries. Essendon ruck Steph Wells hurting her knee, Tigers forward Sarah Hoskins her hamstring. Alexia Pesce, ABC News.
Brisbane Heat has begun its WBBL campaign brilliantly, beating title holder Adelaide by 4 wickets at the Adelaide Oval. The Heat sent in the strikers with Sheikha Pandey taking the vital early wicket of South African star Laura Boulevard. Australian batter Talia McGrath did her best to set a competitive total, her unbeaten half-century getting the side to 5 for 133. Brisbane looked in control until late in their innings when Megan Shute took 2 wickets in an over. It wasn't enough, with an unbeaten 44 from player of the match Charlie Knott getting her side home. The New Zealand men's cricket team has made history by winning a test series in India for the first time. Spinner Mitchell Santner took 13 wickets for the match as the Black Caps defeated the host nation by 113 runs in the second test. New Zealand has an unbeatable 2-0 lead in the 3-match series. It's the first time in 12 years that India has lost a test series at home.
A lot of New Zealand teams have come here over the past 69 years, I think it is, and 13 series, and to be the first team to win a series over here is immensely special, and very proud of this group.
Supercars Championship leader Will Brown will take a crucial points buffer into the final stop of the season after finishing on the podium at the Gold Coast 500. The second race of the weekend started with carnage as 8 cars were involved in a pile-up calling for the safety car. Bathurst winner Brodie Kostecki was unfazed as he made the most of pole position to secure his second win of the year. Will Brown finished runner-up, followed by Brock Feeney, who will be his only challenger for the championship title, which will be decided in Adelaide.
Definitely, I need to get some points over Brock at the end of the day. You know, he's the main rivalry now. He's my teammate. He's pushing hard. So good points haul going into Adelaide.
The nationwide search for Australia's next Paralympians has kicked off in Darwin. It's part of an effort to build on the nation's success in Paris before Australia's Games in 2032. Lillian Rangia reports.
It's not the gold medal that sticks out in Judith O'Hearn's memory of her performance in Sydney 2000.
The important thing was seeing kids from the NT that were in the audience because of the, 24 years on, you'd think I'd be not emotional about it.
She comes in and wins the gold. Gold and Judith Crane of Australia.
It took 6 years training for the 33-year-old Darwin school teacher who once struggled to swim a lap to find global success, all while working full-time.
We didn't get any financial support to do that, where at that time, Olympic athletes did have some funding and sponsorship.
She says the 2000 Games helped create broader recognition for para-athletes. A Northern Territory talent development program is supporting Paralympic hopefuls to travel nationally and compete with others in their category.
It makes me feel like I want to be there at that level now.
The Australian Sports Commission has started its talent search for the Brisbane 2032 Paralympics with the help of development programs.
You had fun?
Yeah.
What sports did you do?
Everything.
Everything?
A third of Australia's Paris 2024 Paralympians were recruited through talent searches. And nearly 6 months after a motorbike accident changed his life, the session is helping Daniel Forsman find a sport to achieve his new goal.
Not long after I woke up in the ICU, Mum said that if I can get to LA in 28, she'll take me to Vegas afterwards.
Although the sector's come far in 2024, there's still a way to go.
If you want to go and do weights or a workout session, there are very few gyms that have accessible equipment.
My biggest goal is telling myself keep going and don't give up.
The Scouts head to Sydney next with golden hopes for 2032. Lillian Rangia, ABC News, Darwin.
Time to check all the weather details now, and tonight's photo of a superb blue wren was sent in to us by Marion McDewey. It was a fine and warm day across Adelaide today. In the city it reached 26.2 degrees at 11 this morning after an overnight low of 12.3. A band of isolated showers contracted northeastwards and cleared earlier today to make way for a fine day across the state. It reached 33 in Woomera, 23 in Kingscote. Cloud over central Australia stretching to the east coast is bringing showers and storms around the Queensland-New South Wales border, possibly intense over areas of Queensland. A front will bring strong winds, showers and possible light snow to Tasmania. High pressure will keep southern Australia dry while directing extreme heat to the northern tropics, where a trough will cause showers and storms. So it'll be hot in Darwin tomorrow with a top of 36 degrees before showers arrive later in the evening. Morning showers and 25 for Brisbane, sunny and 32 in Perth. Closer to home, fine and warm to hot across the north tomorrow, up to 36 degrees in Oodnadatta, becoming windy with 27 in Port Augusta. Dry across the south, apart from possible light morning showers near southern coasts. 25 degrees for Lameroo, 20 degrees for Coonawarra. A current strong wind warning for Spencer Gulf will continue tomorrow, but clear for Gulf St Vincent at midnight tonight. A fine day for Adelaide with a bit of cloud about, 24 degrees for the city, down to 11 degrees overnight. On the waters, winds shifting south to southeasterly, reaching 25 knots early afternoon, seas to 1.5 metres north of Grange. The sun will rise around 6:15 and set around 7:45. It's looking good for the week ahead, with temperatures on the rise. 28 degrees on Wednesday, 25 degrees on Thursday and on Friday, up to 30 degrees on Saturday, before a change arrives, dropping back down to 23 degrees for this time next week. That's the latest from the Adelaide newsroom. Thanks so much for your company. Good night.